All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. Um, Others are joining, just a second. Playing both the MC and the greeter at the door. But thank you everybody for joining us today. This is our first AIN workshop of the academic school year. I am Kristen Moorhead. I'm a coordinator at the coordinator of the Arrowhead Innovation Network at New Mexico State University's Arrowhead Center. And the Arrowhead Center is the entrepreneurial division of New Mexico State University. We provide a host of entrepreneurial training, business support services and programs, including access to over 40 experts who volunteer their time with us as enterprise advisors, who are joining us from all across the nation. And so a couple years ago, we started offering these workshops as a means of providing support and access to our community to learn more about business development strategy and to showcase the expertise of our enterprise advisors. So I'm really excited today to introduce to everyone Stephen Khuong, the CEO of CuraCubby. CuraCubby is a powerful online platform that supports education institutions with their client management goals, including enrollment, automated billing, and easy online payments for parents. And today, Stephen is going to be speaking with us about successful fundraising through powerful storytelling. As we get started, I will ask everyone to please keep yourself muted throughout the presentation, but if you have a question, let us know. Please feel free to I think there's a raise your hand feature. I'll be monitoring all of the participants so I can help mute, unmute, or field questions. If you want to add things in the chat, I would also encourage you to do that. So at that, I will turn it over to Stephen, and I thank you all for joining us today, and we're excited to get this started.
Well, thank you, Kristen, for the warm welcome. It's really kind of you to give me the opportunity to come on and share some of my experiences with you guys. I'm really happy to see so many of my friends on this call as well. It's always encouraging to know that I have people that love me, so that's nice. This is a very interesting topic for me because it is something that all entrepreneurs in the startup space have to deal with. And, you know, I've probably have made more mistakes in this realm than I like to admit, but to your benefit, you can learn from my mistakes and we can, you know, mutually benefit, I think. There is a confession that I want to make. So I'm deathly afraid of doing a 20-minute monologue. So to the extent that we can have you guys participate, that's always going to be a more enjoyable experience. So let's leave it there. I know, Kristen, you have your hands on the mute buttons and all that kind of stuff, but I think there's also a chat, like a chat function somewhere down here.
Yep, down in the menu bar.
Yep. So if you can be so kind as to help me navigate that, you know, we can stop at any point during my presentation and we can kind of dig a little bit deeper.
Sure will.
All right, so let me share my screen and let's try to make this happen. I'm not the expert Zoom user, so let me see what I can do here. So, can you all see this?
Yep.
All right. So, let's do it. How many people here know what this is? You can go through the chat or you can unmute yourself, you can jump in. Definitely some feedback here would be beneficial.
The Lion King.
That is the Lion King. And I'm going to ask you, Eileen, what in the world does the Lion King have to do with fundraising?
Are there Mufasas in fundraising?
There's a bunch of Mufasas in fundraising. You got that one right.
I'm not quite sure. Perseverance?
Yeah, I think it's all of that. But I want to maybe take it to a higher level. The Lion King, for what it's worth, it's a very memorable story that evokes powerful emotions in all of us. Do we tend to agree? We all love The Lion King because at some point in the movie we've laughed, some point in the movie we've cried, and some point in the movie we were anxious and afraid. So I'm going to assume that we've all felt those emotions while watching The Lion King. And the reason why this is important is because when we're building relationships with others, especially in the context of a business, you're talking to investors, people might not remember all of the details of your conversation, but they're always going to remember how you made them feel. And that's why The Lion King is such a powerful analogy to fundraising. To the extent that you can elicit emotions and get your listener to remember you, you've built a foundation for everything else to come. So, what is fundraising? First of all, as an entrepreneur, your job is to grow. You're constantly growing. You're growing your spirit, you're growing your mindset, you're growing your company, you're growing your team. And at some point, you're going to reach an inflection where the effort that you're putting towards that growth will need an accelerator. And more often than not, that accelerator is going to be coming in the form of capital or money. And in order to raise capital successfully, we have to practice what Alec Baldwin is showing us here in one of my favorite movies, Glenn Ross, the ABCs, which is A, always, B, C, closing. Always be closing. Practicing the close is paramount to fundraising. And just like you guys know this already, that skills in all realms of our lives are perishable. Whether you're doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or you're practicing a new foreign language, the moment that you stop practicing, those skills perish. So in the realm of fundraising, I want you guys to remember A, B, and C. Always be closing, practicing on that close. And there's another point, and this is perhaps one of the most important points here. Before I go into that, I have another question for you guys, and I want someone else to answer other than Eileen. Who is the best hero out of the three characters that you see there? Who's the best one? Anybody, quickly. No takers?
Spider-Man. Love Spider-Man.
Zeke says Spider-Man. Any other takers? Who's the best hero?
A lot of Moanas in the chat.
A lot of Moanas in the chat. Okay. No one for Lightning McQueen. Okay. I'm a Lightning McQueen fan, but I'm going to tell you, you're all right and you're all wrong. This is a trick question. Confirmation bias played into every single one of your answers. For you Moana lovers, there's a reason why you're connected to her. For Zeke, he loves Spider-Man because he probably grew up reading the Marvel Universe. And I love Lightning McQueen because my son just made me buy like 10 of those things. So I grew fond of Lightning. So confirmation bias is extremely important when we are thinking about fundraising, because your investors are coming from all different types of backgrounds, and sometimes seemingly even from different universes. Depending on who and where you're raising money from, you could be talking to your uncle, your rich uncle, maybe a rich friend, maybe an angel investor that's part of your career network. And potentially you're talking to an institutional investor as well. All of these people have confirmation bias. They are going to have preferences for what they know. So therefore, when you're thinking about fundraising and you're thinking about the strategy for fundraising, you must know your audience. That is going to be key. All right, let's move on to the actual tactics of what we're going to discuss today. So the point today is that we're going to approach fundraising from the perspective of a narrative or storytelling. And this is extremely powerful. this image here evokes a certain emotion in all of us, and they're all going to be different, but I'm going to tell you what it means for me. What it means for me is this. Everyone has a story to tell. Everyone. But most of us will keep that story a secret. And perhaps it's because we don't feel that our story is important or interesting, or maybe we're even embarrassed by it. But I'll tell you a secret. All of the characters, the relationships, the experiences in your life matters. It matters a lot, because that is the authentic foundation you're going to build when you describe your story to an investor. So before you can even craft your story and generate a narrative for your investors, you have to know your own story. And to the extent that you can be brave and authentic with your own story, that's going to give you the foundation to really make your fundraising pitch successful. All right, we need audience participation here again, Kristen. Question for the audience. What do these 4 movies have in common? Waiting for some takers here. I might even give out some prizes.
Teamwork.
We got teamwork. What else?
A lot of unnatural, supernatural type stuff.
A lot of unnatural, supernatural type stuff. I'll give you that one as well. What else?
A couple people in the chat pointing out that they're series. There's multiple stories.
Multiple stories. There's like a trilogy or more.
There's an
What else?
antagonist and a protagonist.
Ah, who's saying that?
Nadia.
Nadia, my girl Nadia. There's an antagonist and a protagonist. Exactly. You're all right. It's so close, right? So I'm going to give you a clue. Has anyone here heard of the hero's journey? No one. Okay. Well, the hero's journey is an amazing narrative structure that's been repeated for thousands of years, and perhaps through thousands of movies in cinema. And we don't really recognize it because it's so visceral and it feels so innate in our system. But I'll tell you what the hero's journey is, okay? There's 4 parts, and I think Nadia nailed it. There's a protagonist and there's an antagonist. And always in the hero's journey, the protagonist is a commoner. What do I mean by that? So Neo in the Matrix, before he was an all-powerful Neo, what was he? He was a computer programmer who couldn't sleep at night and was taking massive amounts of drugs. Before Frodo was an all-powerful servant of Gandalf, who was he? He was a commoner in the Shire, and I think his favorite thing to do was to grow vegetables and eat food, right? So part 1 to the hero's journey is that you have a protagonist that is a commoner. Part 2, there has to be a fantastical adventure in a mysterious world. Do we all agree? Where does Star Wars take place? You guys know this. In a galaxy far, far away, right? Harry Potter. Lord of the Rings. My God, The Matrix. That takes place in like your head. But they're all mysterious places, and there's a reason for that. Point number 4. There has to be a victorious action or victory in decisive crisis, meaning that we expect, all of us, we're voting for, we're rooting for this commoner protagonist to win, and we know that he or she's going to win. We just don't know how, but we know that that victory is coming. And then point number 4, there has to be transformation. At the end of every single movie, the protagonist, commoner, is now transformed into And not only have they transformed themselves into a superhero, but the world around them has been transformed as well. Now, how is that for a storyline? And why am I even talking about the hero's journey? Because when it comes to fundraising and getting people to give you money, you must be that hero in the hero's journey. There's no option. So let's get into the details of the hero's journey as it relates to fundraising and your business. The number one mistake that I've seen people making, and I've made this mistake tons of times in my life as well. We tend to talk about product before we talk about people. So in this particular picture, you have Luke Skywalker carrying the lightsaber. And I'm going to ask you guys another question. When you're watching Star Wars, are you more interested in the outcome of Luke or more interested in the outcome of the lightsaber? There's a prize to this answer. Somebody give me an answer, please.
Luke.
Lola, I can depend on you for an answer.
Luke.
Luke! We love Luke. The lightsaber is simply a weapon that he's using to help him get somewhere along this journey and to produce this fantastical outcome. But we care about Luke. Yes, we care about the lightsaber. It's going to kind of suck if he has to fight all of these villains alone, bare hand, without the lightsaber. But at the end of the day, it's people before product. And I've seen so many investment decks where the founder or the CEO of the company spends 15 minutes, 20 minutes talking about how great their product is. This widget is going to save the world. It's the best thing since sliced bread. But we know nothing about the founder, nothing about the CEO. Why should we even care? So we have to remember, when we're thinking about pitching to an investor, always, always, always people before product. Because the product will have more significant meaning when it's connected to you, the protagonist. Number 2, the Mystery World of TAM. Does anyone here know what TAM stands for? It's an acronym. Zeke, do you know what it means?
I don't.
Does anyone here know what it means? This is one of those super answers, like double the points, maybe even quadruple the points. Anyone want to take a guess?
Total available market.
Yoon, you have 40 points in your arsenal. Collect that at the end of this discussion. I'll send you something. Total addressable market or total available market. Guys, I'm going to tell you, this is super, super important. In every investor meeting that you're going to have, your investors are going to ask you, so what's the size of the market? Oh, it's $100 million. Oh, it's $1 billion. Oh, it's $40 billion. So I'll give you an example. In the case of CuraCubby, our total addressable market is $200 billion. But that number is not important. It's really, really not important. If I only talk about the number, that's a mistake. And I see too many entrepreneurs only focusing on the number and not the other mysterious worlds that are related to the TAM. So in this particular slide, we're looking at the map of Middle Earth. This is from the Lord of the Rings. And I'll tell you, your investors are not going to be interested in the elevation of a mountain in Gandhar versus the elevation of a mountain in Rohan. They're just not. They're going to figure that stuff out by themselves, right? Total addressable market. If I want to look at, the market cap for Tesla, I can easily find that. I don't need you to tell me that. What the investors really want to know is the contextual connection that you have to the TAM. So in the case of CuraCubby, we have a total addressable market of $200 billion, The reason why that's important is because Steven, the co-founder of the company, encountered lots of problems in this total addressable market. He experienced these problems as he was helping operate a preschool that eventually grew to an NPS California non-public school, and that he learned slowly about the potential of the TAM through his experience. So in other words, this map of Middle Earth is not interesting if we're only going to be looking at the numbers. But it gets extremely interesting if we can understand the relationship between Gandar and Rohan and how the navigator of the map has special insights into the TAM. All right, so that's rule number 2. Rule number 3, victory in crisis. Victory in crisis. Remember, your investors already know the hero's journey. It is a very, very structured narrative that's been passed down over the ages. So there's pros and there's cons. In one aspect, they know what the outcome's going to be. They know eventually how your pitch is going to come out. But the con is that they expect you to win, because in the hero's journey, there's always victory in crisis. So the question for you, entrepreneur and business people, what are you going to show your investors to make them believe that you have the magic elixir? How are you going to produce victory in crisis? So in the instance of the Matrix, you have Neo apparently stopping bullets in midair. That is like an impossible outcome. To us, that's not reality. I don't know anyone that can put up their hand like that and stop bullets. But that's the magic of storytelling. You get to say whatever you want. So as your investors are expecting you to win in your journey into entrepreneurship, you have to show them how you're going to win. Why are you the chosen one? What do you know about the go-to-market strategy that your competitors don't? How are you going to overcome adversities? How are you going to beat your adversaries? Show your investors victory in crisis. Point number 4, the transformation. If we are given all the resources in the world, if we're given this magic wand and this flying broom, well, in the case of your business, if you're given $100 million or all the capital in the world that you need, what are you going to transform? How are you going to disrupt the market that you want to participate in? So for example, if you're in real estate and you're given $100 million, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to spend it on one mansion? Or are you going to build multiplexes in a neighborhood where your competitors are not aware of, where you can potentially have a lot of competitive advantages? Your investors want to know about your transformation. They want to know how you're going to transform the world, but perhaps more importantly, how you're going to be transformed as a result of your journey. And the reason why this is important is because that's going to give them an indication of where you're going to take the company. Is this a company that's being built to be bought out by somebody else? Is this a company that's going to merge and potentially buy another company? Or perhaps this company is going to be the company that's going to go for that $2 billion IPO valuation. So you must know your transformation. And I want to close off this presentation with another image for you guys. Just like Simba and his dad sitting on the ledge, overlooking the savannah in Kenya, enjoying the beautiful sunset, so can you. Scene could be your outcome as well. And it's really important because there is true magic in storytelling. And that magic is this: you can write your own outcome. If you write your own outcome and I believe in you, then guess what? That's really infectious. If I believe in you and you believe in yourself too, so will your investors. And that, my friends, is the secret to fundraising from my experience. Before we wrap up and go to Q&A, we have to pay some dues here. Definitely really special shouts out to all of the people that have made this possible. Kristen and MSU, the Arrowhead Innovation Network, UTEP, UC Berkeley, Borderplex Alliance, my team at CuraCubby, all of our investors, and all of the brave entrepreneurs out there putting it on the line, and especially super inspirational people like Nadia Bayam, and especially a birthday shout out to my mentee, Karina Hinton. So that's it, guys. I hope you really enjoyed that. I'm gonna stop sharing and let's go to Q&A.
Awesome. So if anybody wants to start it off, you're welcome to unmute yourself. And if we get too many questions, you can put them in the chat. Let me know as we go forward, but I open it up to whoever wants to go first.
Let's do it. Oh, I love seeing all my friends on here. So there's so much love in this room. Okay, I'm gonna pick on, let me see, I'm gonna go down the line here. I'll pick on somebody. Kirsten Kimura. Kirsten, I just saw you 2 weeks ago. Give me a question.
I knew you would pick me. I just knew it.
And by the way, Kirsten is a phenomenal entrepreneur. She runs a fitness business. By the way, if I call you out, I'm going to be promoting your business. That's just who I am.
Amazing.
So you have a question for me, Kirsten. I know you have one.
Oh, yeah. So thank you. First of all, I've experienced it definitely myself too, that people crave connection. This is what I've seen. They want to resonate. They want to talk to somebody who resonates, and not just like, you know, you have your Instagram picture and there's just your logo and they're like, but I don't know anything about you. So I think they want to really know you, get to know you, and this is how you make connections, and kind of this is how you start the real connections in the business. And let me see what I would ask. Do you have like specific tools for doing like market research? How do you get to know your people? Do you ask them questions? How do you do it? What kind of platforms do you use for that?
Yeah, that's an amazing question. And I'll be honest with you, like I have OCD. So before I speak to any potential investors, like I'm all over Google. Like I'm on LinkedIn, I'm like, who does this person know that I already know? And then I'm backdooring this stuff, right? I'm like, yo, Mark, I'm gonna talk to Dan like in 2 days. Like, who is Dan? Like, what do I need to know? So all of you guys have networks. You guys are on LinkedIn, you guys are on Instagram, you guys are on Facebook. It's really, really important to go back to understand like confirmation bias. Like, you know, when I'm talking to Kirsten, I know Kirsten really well. And I know like the things that I can say to Kirsten and the things that I can't say to Kirsten, because I don't, you know, I want this to be a pleasurable conversation. So I think that's going to be really important. I mean, I wish there was like a magic tool that I can just punch in a person's name, like all their stuff will come up. But I would say like Google, LinkedIn, your Facebook, and then tap into your connections. And that's really, really key. Like really do your homework before you talk to your investors. So we got a bunch of chats here. Let's see.
Yeah, a lot of them are just complimenting your presentation, and
Oh,
you know, always amazing. We're always really happy to hear from you. Anybody else?
You know, I paid for all of that stuff, you know? So at the end of this, I'm gonna have to get my checkbook out and start knowing these people.
Anybody else have any burning questions or anything you've been chewing on?
I have a question. This is Anna. If that's okay. I was just curious because you mentioned when you were talking about like that inspirational part of it, that hero's journey, and you kind of referenced like how companies will say like, oh, we're going to change the world. And I know that that was a really big thing coming out of like the .com boom. So how do you recommend companies and leaders go about how do they talk about what they do without it just being some trivial, like, oh, we'll change the world? Like, how do you get more specific in what you think that you can achieve when talking to investors?
That's a great question. Thank you, Anna. So if you guys can recall the slide with Luke Skywalker and the lightsaber. So I think that's going to be key. You have to establish people before product. If you're just talking about changing the world, like through a product, I think that may resonate with like investors that are coming from like investment banking and they're just like crunching numbers and doing spreadsheets. But for most startups, you know, we get our money from, like in the beginning, we get our money from family and friends, and then we get our money from angels, and then we get our money from institutional investors. So there's a progressive stage, and really early on, I would say like even like before Series B, like from seed, pre-seed, seed, Series A, all the way up to Series B, that relational perspective of you plus product plus TAM transforming is going to be really, really key. I think like after Series B, when you already have like a lot of your statistics and your financials together, that may become less relevant. But I'm going to tell you though, like every investor that I've ever spoken to in my life are like keen on leadership teams. They're like, you know, hey, we're going to invest based on you and based on your people and based on who you can recruit. So like, for instance, like, you know, the moment that we were able to recruit you, Anna, like our stock went up. I'm not kidding you. Like this is a fact. It's a truth. It's a fact. Like I went to our investor, we had an investor meeting, like, I don't know, like a week after we hired you. And I told him, like, look, we just brought on our content manager from learning.com. And Mark was like, dude, that's incredible. Like your stock just went up. So it's not just like functionally what you're serving for the investor, but it's like really building that team. So Lord of the Rings, Part 1, do you remember the name of that movie? The Fellowship of the Ring. It wasn't Frodo and the ring. It wasn't Gandalf and the stick. It was the Fellowship of the Ring, meaning that let's get these people together. And the people behind the journey creates that transformative process that your investors are going to buy into. So, yeah, I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, that was really helpful. Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Hey, Stephen, I have a question for you.
Lola, what's up, Lola?
So I guess my question is, at what point do you decide that your product is good enough to take it to investors? At what phase do you say, you know what, I feel confident to bring this up to investors to see if they're willing to invest in what I've created?
Now. The answer is always now. Because the best time to do something was yesterday, and the next best time to do something is now. The reason why I say that is because as entrepreneurs and as business people, we have like the devil sitting on one shoulder and then like the archangel sitting on the other shoulder, and they're constantly at battle. So sometimes we'll feel like euphoric, like this is the best thing, it's gonna change the world and I'm gonna make so much money. And then right before I'm gonna hit send on that email, the devil is gonna pop up and say, Lola, are you freaking crazy? This is the worst idea ever. If you send this over, you're gonna get laughed at. So my thing in life is I'd rather get rejected than to have regret. So maybe I send out that email 100 times and I get rejected 100 times. But at least I know that I've done something, and like, you know, on my deathbed, I'm not gonna have regret and be like, look, you know, when I was like 40 years old, I wish I would have sent out 100 emails. I just didn't do it. Like, I don't want that. And I would encourage all of you guys on this call to adopt the same belief system. At the end of the day, there's like billions and billions of people in this world. Like sending out 100 emails are not going to make an impact on billions and billions of people. So it's a numbers game. And this is, by the way, this is not just for fundraising. This is like for everything in your business. Adopt that mentality. So Lola, was that helpful for you?
It was. Thank you, Stephen.
No, thank you.
Awesome. Who's next? Start picking on people again.
We're picking up people.
I actually have one more.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit more about dealing with rejection? If you think that you put out something really, really good and you're sure it's going to crash it and people are like, nah, maybe not, or next time, or money is the issue, you know, what do you do? How do you get over it?
So, you know, fortunately and unfortunately, people are both logical and emotional. And depending on like which side of the bed you woke up on, you can be a little bit more emotional one day or a little bit more logical the other day. So I think the balance here is to keep everything in perspective and look at rejection simply as part of the process. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with a gentleman by the name of Jack Ma. Have you guys heard of a company called Alibaba? It's like the biggest e-commerce company in the world.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So Jack Ma has gotten rejected from Harvard like 10 times. He's gotten rejected from like college 3 times. And before he started Alibaba, he actually, when KFC opened their first restaurant in like China, he applied to KFC and there were 24 positions and he applied 24 times and he was rejected all 24 times. So he didn't even get hired by KFC. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is because in business, you're going to have to develop a certain level of resilience that makes you that supernatural character. So if you like Moana, you have to be Moana, right? No matter how many times Maui pushes you over the ledge and you know you're drowning deep in the ocean, you have to swim back up and get back on the raft. You have to be Moana. So that is what it is. And by the way, you know, Moana, she cried in the movie many times, but she kept moving forward. And that's what business is all about. You're gonna cry, you know, a lot. I'm not an especially emotional person, but I've cried. Like, you know, I've like CuraCubby. I mean, I didn't tell you like how many times people are like, we're just not interested in CuraCubby. It's just like the market's not big enough. It's not interesting. Like what you guys are doing no, we don't like it. But the moment that we found the one person that loved CuraCubby, guess what? It was like a bandwagon. All these investors started coming on board and we love them because they resonate with a story that's personal to me. So it's not personal in the realm of business and entrepreneurship. Well, let me take that back. There's a paradox. It's personal to the extent that you have to bring your personality and your life story into the business, but the action, the process, the alchemy, that's not personal. That's just how things are in the universe. Kirsten, was that helpful to you?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
We've got a couple questions in the chat. Let's see. Liz is having mic camera issues, but she wants to know, do you have any specific networking strategies? How to network with intention and to make an impact? How to meet the right people and get into the right room?
Yes, I do. I think first and foremost, for effective networking to work, you have to be really authentic and you have to be really vulnerable. Some of the mistakes that I've made in my past is that I've, you know, kind of walked into situations with a pretentious manner, meaning that like, this is not who I am, but I'm going to kind of pretend to be somebody else. And that's always backfired on me. Always, always, always. So I've learned in my recent years that, you know, Steve, you are who you are, and people are either going to like you or they're not going to like you, but you're going to be authentic and you're going to be vulnerable. And there's something super magical about this, because what you're essentially doing is that you're putting your authentic self into the universe, and then you're manifesting reciprocal energy from people that want to be in your circle. So in other words, there's a natural filtering process that happens in your network when you're truly authentic and you're truly vulnerable. The people that want to be in your tribe are going to be hand raisers. The people that wants nothing to do with you, they're magically going to leave the room. So I think that's going to be point number one with effective networking. Bring your vulnerability to the table and be authentic. Like, shed your skin, like let people know who you are. And then point number two is more tactical. It's about keeping inventory. Like, you know, when we first moved to El Paso, I didn't know anybody. Like, Nadia was one of the first people that I met, and she was just like over and above, like, hey, I really want to help you guys, even though, you know, we might not close on real estate or whatever. I'm here for you. And I think that's like a really, really, like, it's a necessary part of networking, which is seeing the relationship for what it is, a relationship, a connection. And to the extent that you can remove that transactional piece from it, other people are going to feel that. And you're never going to know, like, when the person that you're talking to is connected to another person that may be impactful to your business. So that's my answer. Vulnerability, authenticity, and then building relationships for the long term.
Awesome, thanks. We have another question in the chat. This one's from Dax. In your startup experience, what kind of growing pains did you go through, such as in the scaling phase, that you had to work through?
Still going through those every single day, every single night. Insomnia, anxiety, stress. You know, Lola, where are you? Lola can tell you, because I express it to Lola all the time. You know, growing pains. When we're thinking about early stage startups and early stage entrepreneurship, it's all about doing the right things at the right time. And more often than not, it's like, it's really, really difficult. Like, oftentimes we feel like we're looking through a veil and it's really dark, right? We can kind of feel things and sense things around us, but we don't get like that 20/20 vision. And that's why, I'll come back to answering that question, but I'll say this, and that's why it's super important to have mentors. Super, super important. Like, I'm so blessed right now that, you know, I have mentors that are like, that have made it, like really, really successful people. Like, if I can like jump in a time machine and go back to like when I was in my 20s, like when I was arrogant. Like, I thought I knew everything. Like, I just like super ego charged, like, you know, grind through everything. I know it all. But in hindsight, if I had mentorship like early on, like, I don't know where I would be now. Like, I would probably be like living on Mars, like on SpaceX with Elon Musk, probably something like that. But the reason why I bring up the mentorship and the growing pains is because you need to develop a sense of what you're supposed to do at the right stages. So when we first started the company was bootstrapped. It was money out of my pocket, the money out of my Brian and Ross's pockets. They're my co-founders, and we bootstrapped the company, and we took it as far as we could. And we're like, at some point, we can't keep going like this, because we're just not going to be able to like hire 1,000 people in 5 years, like bootstrapping. So the pain at that point was like, look, so what do? We have to go out there and raise money. So when you're really early on, assuming that, you know, your product isn't one of those products that just like, you know, you put it on Shopify and you sold like 100 million copies and you're rich and you're retired. Like, most of us don't come from that place. most of us come from like the other 99%, which is like, it's a grind. And scaling at the various stages requires us to be like super insightful and be super honest. Like, these are our obstacles. Like, if we don't raise money by tomorrow, we may have to close down. You have to be super realistic. But at the same time, carry a sense of optimism. I just want to see, so what kind of growing pains are you going through and the scaling phases? Okay, great. So after you raise money, the other aspect is absolutely hiring the right people. I cannot say this enough. Like, again, I'll be the first one to admit, I'm the master of like thinking I can do everything myself. I am the master, okay? You know, I'll build the website, I'll do the marketing, you know, but over time I'm like, no, Lola, you know what? You build the website. You know what, Anna, you write the content, like, because you guys are better than me. So as an entrepreneur, it's going to be really critical for all of us to accept our weaknesses and then bring in the right people that's going to be able to address our weaknesses. So those 2 points.
We just got another question in from Zeke. Love your point on victory in crisis. What have been some of the crises that you have gotten through recently with CuraCubby, and how did you get through it? Maybe an example is working through COVID-19.
Yeah. When COVID prompted our country to essentially shut down, as you can imagine, most of our customers are in the business of education. And you guys remember that school, I mean, for the most part, a lot of schools are still not 100% open. They may be open at a certain capacity. So for sure, we've seen a contraction in revenue. We've seen a loss of dollars. And for some of our customers, they have had to close their businesses permanently because it's just crazy out there. So that's our crisis. And you know, we could have done like one of two things. We could have done like, one, okay, since our customers are shrinking, we should be shrinking as well. We should be like cutting, like eliminating half of our staff, doing all these drastic things to mirror what's happening in the market. But I think we're blessed with an executive team that actually has a very optimistic perspective, and they viewed this crisis as opportunity. So instead of shrinking, we actually doubled down on expanding. So like, you know, God bless Anna, we were able to recruit her from learning.com, you know, tremendous impact on the company. We're hiring more people in El Paso. So as a result, we've been able to allocate resources to help some of our customers that are struggling improve their revenue, or at least not lose any more revenue. We've been able to produce really, really great content on our website so that our customers have a source of information and data to draw from for their decision making. So it's how we want to look at life. You know, like if you're given lemons, like you can make lemonade or you can make lemon pie. I mean, there's different ways of approaching it. But absolutely, victory in crisis is something that your investors are going to want to know. Like that should be like when your investors talk to you, they should know like that's deep in your DNA. That's going to give you a huge edge in raising money.
Love it. Thank you.
Thanks for the question, Zeke.
Anybody else?
I want to hear from Yoon, because Yoon she actually knew what TAM. She actually knew what TAM is. Yoon, can we hear from you? What's your background?
Oh, hi, Stephen. Yes, my background is physics.
Uh-huh.
And not in the, I don't know much about internet business. We just licensed the technology from New Mexico State University. We're doing, it's a new way of building membrane for bio applications.
Nice.
And, I also have a company. We develop inhalation therapy for lung infections.
Wow.
That's a technology licensed from UNM, University of New Mexico.
Yeah.
So yes, we constant fundraising. I really like what you said about rejection. Just keep sending out the emails and just keeping at it. A lot of rejections, because my lesson has been, every time people say something, reject you for whatever reasons, and you learn something about your own stories or your own strategies, basically, right? How besides, I know you focus on presentation, also behind that is a lot of strategies. And anyway, it is very, anyway, it's not fun sometimes.
It's no fun a lot of times. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing your story. I mean, talking about, transforming the world, what you guys are doing, like that's hugely transformative. I think you have an advantage here in that, what you guys are doing does not require like tremendous brain power for your investors to see the value in it. I think there's an opportunity for you to draw in some of your personal experiences and inject some of that narrative into the fundraising pitch as well. So I don't know what your life story is, but I can bet money on it that is interesting.
Well, thank you. You talk about the hero's journey, right? The Joseph Campbell's epic stories. I really can see that in every entrepreneur. When we come through, you have to go through all this grind. But I do have a question, since you call me out. It's about anyway. So I'm Chinese. I'm
Chinese.
And I feel sometimes actually in the VC world, it's a huge disadvantage. So it is challenging. So I'm willing sometimes bite my bullet, let other people to approach VC, like a white male with a credible, of course, not anybody, with a credible background.
Sure.
To raise money. Yes, from my personal feel like, okay, I can do this, I'm smart enough and all that. But then I realized you have to play with society's common sense and the perspective, just bite the bullet, swallow your pride in some ways, because the goal is get a company going, not say how good I look.
Yes.
So I definitely feel, since, I feel some disadvantage actually, but I'm okay with it. I'm just the way it is.
Yeah, thank you for raising that. There's still a tremendous amount of disparity between, your white male raising money versus women minority, especially women minority. This discrepancies are huge. And for what it's worth, I think there's some upward positive trends with that shifting, Yoon. So I think there are, just recently, I can probably think of like 3 to 4 funds that have been raised specifically to capitalize on businesses being founded and managed by women and minorities. By the way, are you the founder and CEO of your company?
Yeah, I'm the co-founder and the CEO of the company. So there's a lot of story behind the company. Actually, the mother company actually called VEC Technology Venture. Our job is to looking for patented technology to start a company.
I see.
So we have our own initial fund, but as an interim CEO, let's say, right? Once I raise enough fund, we need to pass this to professional CEOs.
Understood.
That's why I have 2 companies I'm managing right now. So
understood.
I'm going to tap you on the woman-focused VC firm. I think that'd be fascinating to see some of that.
Yeah, please let's connect afterwards. There's at least 2 to 3 that I can think of off the top of my head. And even there are some firms, even though they're not highlighting the fact that they're going to be like positive bias towards women minority founders. I know that they are, because in the Silicon Valley, that's the trend right now. It's almost like, you know, they want to one up each other, like who's going to fund the next successful women minority founder. So that's a positive momentum that's going to help you, Yoon.
Yeah, well, thank you for the encouragement.
No, thank you.
I definitely want to connect afterwards. Pick your brain on it.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I have too many thoughts in my head, so help me get them out.
Thank you, Stephen.
You're welcome.
We have one more question that just came in from Jessica. It says,
Okay.
what happens when the coin flips in that situation when you are a minority among Chinese investors?
Oh, that's a great question. So one of our first investors was a Chinese investor, very, very successful businessman from China. He actually took his company IPO. It was one of the biggest IPOs in, I want to say 2012. Great gentleman, by the way. And Jessica, if I'm reading your question right, I want to make sure that I'm going to answer this properly. So you're in a position where you're talking to investors that are primarily from China. Is that what I'm hearing?
And you're welcome to unmute yourself, Jessica, if you've got a mic.
Okay, thank you.
Can you hear us, Jessica?
Hello.
All right.
Hey, Jessica. Hey, I just want to, before I answer your question, I just want to clarify, are you saying that you're pitching your business primarily to investors from China?
Yes.
Oh, very fascinating. So,
Okay, I
I
help
don't know.
that.
Yeah. You want to
Thank you.
Oh, I know a lot of Chinese investors, but for the technology startups here, actually we're a little bit hesitant, depending on where the money come from, have to be very careful. That's my experience.
You have to be very careful.
For the technology-based startups,
Yeah.
yes, it's not me, it's government.
Yeah.
Because they apply for government grants.
Yep.
NIH and DOD or whatever. So that's for the science-based startups I'm talking about. But
Yeah.
I do know quite a lot. A whole bunch of my Chinese friends is China VCs, but I'm not approaching them.
You know what? You bring up a good point. So if you're going to have foreign investors, my gosh, particularly from China, they're going to end up owning your cap table. And depending on what your product actually is, if it's like in like biotech or like, you know, government defense technology, like that can get pretty sticky because, you know, at some point you're going to have to go through compliance and due diligence, and and future investors may look at that as, I just think that is sensitive because, you know, having your cap table owned by, so I'll say this, like China is a very interesting economy. Yes, there are free markets, but make no mistake about it, the government is involved in every single aspect, right?
Right.
So, and that's a fact. So to an extent, when you have Chinese VCs invest into your company, you're actually inviting a bit of the Chinese government into your company as well. So that's the sensitivity that I would want to raise.
Okay.
Yeah, you do you agree with that?
Yes,
I
you
do.
just have to be
Oh.
careful. If it's like not hard science based, maybe it's okay, because also U.S. government has this export control issues, right? If it's defense related sensor or anything big, no, I wouldn't even touch that to avoid complications.
Jessica, can I ask you what business are you in?
I'm in AR and VR.
So artificial and virtual reality?
No. Augmented reality and virtual reality.
Augmented reality.
Yeah, the thing is that I am in Asia, so that's why I'm gonna start practicing pitching to mostly Chinese investors.
Yep. So I would say, go ahead. I think you should do it. Like pitching doesn't necessarily mean you have to accept their money. It just means that you're getting practice. And to the extent that there's a bunch of people that want to invest in you, that's a great thing. You can, the great thing about you as an entrepreneur is that you have tremendous power that comes in the form of 2 letters, N-O. You can always use N-O, right?
Okay.
That's your power.
Yes. Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Of course.
All right. Well, we are just a minute over our hour time. So I want to thank everyone for joining us. Stephen, I'd invite you to give us any closing thoughts, and then we'll wrap up.
Oh, thank you. Again, I'm tremendously honored and blessed to be in a position where I can share some of my experiences with everyone here. It's really nice to see everyone. I just feel like there's no better time than now. Some of the best companies, the most iconic companies in the world were created during downtime, during recession. And I know that with COVID, everything feels bad and it feels hard. And I mean, I wake up some days thinking like, what the hell is this? But you shake it off and you're like, you just have to move forward. Airbnb, Microsoft, Walt Disney, all created in times of depression and recession. So entrepreneurs out there, like, go get it. Just do it. Like, start now.
Awesome. Thank you all so much.
All right. Have a blessed day.